Welcome to the Generous Business Owner Podcast, where business owners gain inspiration and encouragement to live a legacy, not just leave one. And now your hosts, Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. My name's Jeff Thomas, and I've got our co-host with us, Jeff Rutt. Say hello to the people, Jeff.
Hello to the people.
And we have a very special guest, Bryan Zeamer, with us today. Bryan is the president and owner of Utility Keystone Trailer Sales. And I was asking him before we got started whether that was a hot business or not during COVID. And of course it was. So we'll hear that and many other stories, but welcome to the program, Bryan.
Thank you, Jeff. Good to be here.
Yes, the Jeffs. All right. Jeff Rutt, kick us off.
Yeah, Bryan, just tell us a little bit about the early years of Bryan Zeamer. What was it like in the Bryan Zeamer household? What was it like growing up? Values shaping, faith shaping, junior high, anything entrepreneurial. We find that's a common thread. There's something's always happening in junior high.
Yeah, I grew up in a stable household with my mom and dad. I'm the middle of three, older brother, younger sister. And we learned to work hard from an early age. So when my dad started the business, he was a wrestling coach initially, and then he got into business. And we would clean the business, mop the floors, clean the toilets, vacuum, and that's how we got started in that. And so we learned to work hard. My parents were gracious hosts, very generous with their time and inviting people into our home. And as far as entrepreneurial, I can remember I had two paper routes in junior high. So I grew the business from 1 to 2 paper routes, and would save up money to buy BMX bikes and other things like that. And before that, my dad was a coach at F&M, and he was the manager of student apartments, and I would go door to door selling whatever I made, whether that's like cookies or crafts and things like that. So I had some door to door sales from an early age.
Hey, Bryan, what's F&M?
Oh, sorry, Franklin and Marshall. It's a small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania.
Okay, gotcha.
So how did you figure out the markup on those the different things you were selling was that based on supply and demand? Was it based on cost plus? How'd you figure out what to do?
It was nice because I didn't have any really costs. I'd use my mom's whatever she had, just my labor, and so it'd be 100% profit.
Pretty solid margins.
Yeah, really solid.
I like the model. I like the model.
The model.
Yeah. So walk us through the teenage years.
We're guessing you were doing some wrestling.
Yeah.
I was, as a kid, I just loved motorcycles. I started kids always have a passion. And I remember being 4 or 5 years old and just begging my dad for a motorcycle. And so finally I got him to the Suzuki shop, and I just loved the RM50. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I had worn him down by then. He said to me, if you can start it, you can get it. And so I just kicked my tail off and ended up starting that motorcycle and got it.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
What age was that?
That was 6.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so I rode that for a while till I outgrew it. And I made another deal with my dad. And he said, if you can do 12 pull-ups, I'll get you the Yamaha GT80. So I had to work to get up to 12 pull-ups, and then he bought me that bike. So
that's no joke. 12 pull-ups for any listeners out there that don't do pull-ups.
Yeah.
Try doing 12.
Yep.
Hey, I'm good for 2. So I guess no motorcycle for me.
Yeah. So learn to work hard.
Yeah.
Now you're in you have your motorcycles, walk through the rest of your teenage years and yeah.
Yeah. So, and then
Formation.
my dad was a wrestling coach, so that was kind of a natural progression for my brother and I, and we got involved and started wrestling, and that was good. That was good. It kept us out of trouble and kept us disciplined and working hard and thing. So that was very good for us to work, learn discipline, work ethic, setting goals, and that was a really good experience. Did that through junior high, high school, and into college as well.
Hmm. What do you think you learned from those years that you were able to apply to your both in your business and in starting your nonprofit that we'll talk about later?
I'd say a lot, especially in business, which I got involved in after college. I think just getting into business, I looked at it the same way, where you set goals and you work towards them and you learn how to get there, learn from others. I was blessed to have mentors in my life and coaches and to help me get there, and that was a huge part of it. So that was a natural progression for me, just learning from the sport of wrestling, very individual sport. You're out there alone, and you're out there on display of how much work you've done, right? And so you learn a lot through that, and so that helped me in my business career immensely. And that's part of the reason a lot of wrestlers work here. We know that they have a good work ethic in general, and so we'll definitely tend to hire.
There's nowhere to hide, and there's
That's
definitely perseverance, and the analogy of trying to stay off your back is applies to wrestling and
literally.
business. Yeah.
And figuratively, that's a good point. And you're always going to lose. Like one-on-one sports, you never win everything.
That's right.
So how to overcome adversity and all those things.
Yeah.
So we know you're a wrestling coach now, but okay, so you get through school, and what happens? What's the first job?
Yeah, the first job, I was always a motorhead, like I told you about the motorcycles, and liked cars as well. So I thought, well, I want to sell cars. So found a job selling cars. That was my first job. Learned a lot in that. It's not not an easy business to be a car salesperson.
I've heard it's really hard work, actually.
Yeah. You learn a lot about how to sell and human nature and things like that. So that was my first job.
And then, okay, so now we're obviously in the trailer business. So I mean, it's got wheels, but it's not the same thing as a car. So how'd that transition happen?
Yeah, so my brother and I were second generation, and so my dad started that with some partners in 1978 and bought them out in 84. I joined the business in 96 as a manager trainee. I had worked over the summers, in the shop as a mechanic's helper and pulling weeds and washing trailers and all those things. So when I came into the business, just started from the ground level and learned all the different aspects of the business. And that was really, really good experience to get involved in sales, service, parts,
all of it. Okay, so for people like me that have no clue about that business, what does it look like? Are you leasing who's your customer? Just a little bit, just a primer on the business, if you don't mind.
Yeah, easy way to look at that is we're like a car dealership, except we're in the semi-trailer, the 53-foot trailers, the dry vans, refrigerated. And so it's a full service dealership. We also have a leasing company called Penstro Leasing. And so we are a one-stop shop where sales, service, parts, leasing. Yeah.
So who is a typical buyer? Is it trucking companies? Is it manufacturing companies that want their own, all of the above? What are the top type of customers?
Mostly trucking companies that are moving freight, also private carriers that are moving their own product. So anywhere from an owner operator that has one truck and trailer to a large Fortune 500 that would have thousands.
Are any of your siblings involved in the business?
Yes, my older brother Bill.
How's that gone?
It's going well. Yeah, he's vice president of sales. He's in his gifting. I'm in mine, and it works really well, actually.
Yeah, yeah. That could be hard.
What
It-
advice would you give to
Yeah.
our listeners who are in a family business that have siblings in the business?
We were always taught, we from an early age or from an early start in the business, we went up to the high center to learn about family business. So that was really helpful. And we were always taught, don't go 50-50.
Hmm.
So that's the piece of advice that I think is really a strong piece of advice. And
Why is that?
because you don't have a tiebreaker. You're always at
There's no boss. Who's going to make the decision?
Exactly. You have a yes and a no, then you're going nowhere. So
I don't like 50-50 outside of a family business.
all right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's even worse inside the family. That's actually,
Yeah,
I've never heard that. That's good though.
Just somebody make a decision.
Anybody, even if it's wrong, for the love.
Right. Right.
We're tied all the time. Yeah, that's really good. And so, all right, now you also have this this ministry. Tell us about this ministry that you're involved in.
Yeah, and maybe along with that for faith formation, just walk us through what led up to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. At home, we went to church enough where there were seeds planted when I was young. But I went on a USA Hungary wrestling tour when I was 22 years old. And had a small Bible with me. And my coach, Mike MacArthur at the time, he was our coach. And he said, "Hey, what are you doing with that Bible?" I said, "Well," my girlfriend my girlfriend said, "Where do you stand spiritually?" I said, "I don't know, but I'll find out, let you know." And so I started asking around and trying to see what this was all about, and kind of really testing my faith and where I was. And so through those conversations, and then with my coach, I was saved in Budapest, Hungary when I was 22 years old.
Wow.
And so that was a very, incredible trip for me personally and my faith. And that's when I really got serious about my faith.
Okay, we got to unpack that. I don't think we've never had anybody tell a story about being saved in Budapest at 22. So I know, I'm sure you've thrown that out many times, but we got to hit pause on that for a second. Okay, hold on. Let me set this. Here's what I heard. My girlfriend was kind of testing you a little bit, right?
Yes.
Right. She's like, hey, probably, sounds like she was probably a strong believer, wanted to know kind of where you stood. Fair enough. Right. And you got this Bible trying to kind of figure out how to give her an answer. Your coach, your wrestling coach, sees this Bible and asks you, it's the same question. Was he a believer?
He was a believer. Yes.
Okay. So that got his attention, right? I guess in a positive way. He's like, oh, okay. So was he part of this process for you? Was he a mentor in the faith for you or no?
Just that trip. He was like, yeah, he came along right at the right time. And but I had been searching for a few months before the trip. Right. So
yeah, your heart was primed.
Yes.
For the discussion.
Yeah. So I brought that Bible with me to read, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And so I told him the story. I said, Heather, my wife, she's my wife now.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
It makes it even better.
Right? Yeah, it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Completes the story. Yeah.
Made the right choice in multiple ways here. Yeah. Okay. So now how does that lead to the ministry today?
Yeah. So that was, when I was 22, and about 10 years later, I'm in the business and taking on more responsibility in the business. And building, Heather and I growing our family. We have three boys, Kyle, Zach, and Connor. And so my dad would take my brother and I out to Willow Creek Leadership Summit every year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so this was a few years in, and I went, and Bill Hybels opened up with a Holy Discontent talk. And boy, did it ever grab me. I thought God speaking directly to me. I'm just like zoned in, and he was talking about, hey, if there's something that you can't stand, do something about it. Get in the game, make an impact for the kingdom. And so I was ready to go. I felt like, okay, God, I hear you. I'm in. I'm all in. I just didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that holy discontent was. So I went home, and I'm pretty excited about this, telling my wife as soon as I got home. And I said, I'm going to do something. I just don't know what this holy discontent is. And she goes, well, that's easy. I said, okay, well, please tell me. And so she said, well, that's your holy discontent is when men don't do what they should be doing, leading their families and leading people, in their communities and at work. And when she said that, basically Men of Iron was planted.
Wow.
And so I'm a business guy, so I took a business. God had given me that vision at that moment. So I'm a business guy, put a business plan together basically, and I said, hey, I called my pastors up and said, hey, let's get breakfast. I want to ask you something and propose something. And so I put the plan on the table at the restaurant and told them what happened. And at that point, I had some credibility and some relationship built up with both of them. And they said, this is exactly what we need. Let's do it. So they gave me the blessing to move forward. That was 2005. We started at our church in 2006. And so we're now that many years into it.
Okay, so now actually, one thing I want to back up on for a second, because I want to get into this. This is so cool, but I think that's interesting that holy discontent got a hold of you, because what I thought you were going to say is I knew exactly what I needed to fix. So I think it's interesting that phrase captured you without you knowing exactly what it was. How do you explain that? Did you feel like you just had some discontent around maybe not having enough purpose? Or I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No.
Why do you think that captured you?
No, I'm not really a discontent type of person. I'm more of like, what can I do to make change happen? What can I do to make an impact? And so it was more about, to me, like taking his talk of holy discontent to a plan to make an impact, to go forward. And so Heather helps me to bring clarity. So that's what that was about.
Oh, that's awesome though, man. I love it that it captured you in terms of you just want to have more impact, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's cool. And that she knew immediately.
She
Yes.
did.
God
It's
bless our
also in,
lives, man. Like, I don't ask
exactly.
my wife enough questions.
Yeah.
If I'm stymied, it's like you just throw it out. Oh, wait, you have the answer right away. Why didn't I ask you before? But that's so cool. Okay, so now, but I'm picturing you showing up. Okay, you got a business plan, but now you show up at this first meeting. What are you going to teach?
Yeah.
Like, did you have to create the curriculum? You use somebody else's, put it together? What'd you do?
Yeah. So before that, I had coaches in my life. I had managed business coaches, wrestling coaches, mentors. And so I did have some experience in that regard. I believe God orders our steps. And so at that moment, he had brought me to that point. And it wasn't like he did equip me in that moment to move forward. And so I had a book and on mentorship, a brochure, and I just went to work as far as getting mentors and then advertising for proteges and matching them up. We had 20 men involved in our church, Victory Church, in the first year, and then that doubled the next year. And but from the beginning, God had given me a very large vision for it, more of a global vision, not just a local one. Yet we're about one man. We're about changing culture one man at a time. And so it is a big vision, but it happens one man at a time.
And so what does that process look like? Is it a group event? Is it one-on-one mentorship? All of the above? What does that kind of look like?
We use the analogy of a mountain. And so we have base camp material where people, men can get involved without a lot of resources or time commitment, all the way up to the top of the mountain where you have one-to-one mentorships and executive coaching. And so we have some group things in the middle there, and we have equilibrium retreats in the middle. And our mission is to get men on that mountain and move them up in their faith, help them move step by step in their faith, which then creates a culture change with whatever culture they're involved in.
You have a couple of success stories you might share with us?
I do. We've seen marriages saved. We've seen relationships healed. One thing comes to my mind. I had a protege years ago, and one of my first questions in the first meeting was, "Hey, what's your relationship with your parents?" And there wasn't one, right? And so that question led to this guy reaching out to his dad, and God healing that relationship, and then later his dad passing and getting saved along the way. And that's just one example of what a good question can do to somebody that's willing to make an impact or a change.
Yeah, amazing.
That's powerful.
It really is. Now, along the way, I mean, this could be in the ministry, it could be in the business, it could be both, but luckily you've been in business long enough, or unluckily, to experience 08. So there's always an 08 story in here. And then there's the COVID acceleration that I talked to, but maybe talk about what was a setback you've had anywhere in your life, that you might share, and sort of how did you get out of that pit?
Yeah, good question. We did have the Great Recession did hit us, but before that, we moved here where we are now in 2000, and there was a recession at that time.
True.
So, and at the same time, we were going through a succession plan, and my dad and I were at odds, kind of at each other's throats, and trying to navigate through a succession plan and through a recession. And those were some tough times for both of us and the business. And I think what we did continue to communicate and to talk through it. There were some shouting matches and some times where things were said that probably didn't need to be said, some emotional things that could have been left unsaid. However, we got through that, and we were able to have a successful transition. And so in 2008, January of 2008 is when I bought my dad out in January of 2008. So that took some time there to work through those challenges, but we got through it, and we have a great relationship today.
That's awesome. What advice would you have for someone going through a rough time like that? You had two things happening: succession and recession.
Yeah.
Those are both tough things, and they like you. It was a double whammy. And you layer on that emotion what advice would you have for a listener that's going through it right now?
Honestly, is to find a mentor, right? And I had a mentor at the time that was not business. That wasn't his thing. Business wasn't his thing, but he gave me such good wisdom for the relationship, for how to look at this biblically. And he helped me big time as far as getting through that and keeping those relationships strong, where I don't think I would have been able to do it. I think that when you have all that pressure on you and you don't have some outside help giving you that wisdom, I think you're in for some trouble. So I would definitely say to find some counsel.
Yeah. So for our listeners out there, that was not a pre-planned question and answer, but we will put in the show notes the link to Men of Iron, where you can connect with a mentor.
Thanks.
And
I just have to point out, I know that obviously it's got to be based on the verse about iron sharpening iron, right? Is that where the name came from?
Yes.
But I was pointing out before we started recording that you also own a ton of iron. I mean, it just kind of.
Yeah. How many trailers are in your lot, Brian? They're packed in there. If you could see Brian's lot, they pack them in there about how many inches apart? I can't.
Yeah, they're pretty packed. Maybe there's too many right now, but
Yeah, I was going to say, he doesn't like it. He wants them. He only wants 2 on the lot. You don't want to have too much inventory. Okay, this is. I know that's. You don't want to talk about that.
Yep, that's right.
Yep. Well, so maybe talk about, like, this is a big issue. The men's discipleship, I think, is a hard space, because I think, I just came from an event where our COO Cale Dow just gave his testimony about a struggle he had in his life, and man, it was all guys, called Toolbox, and wasn't a dry eye in the place, because I mean, it was just gut wrenching what kind of this event that God took his family through, and I think, what was so amazing about it was inspiring, because God helped him and his family get through this thing, but just the pure transparency. I think I'm totally guilty of this. I would like to suppress all the stuff I'm doing wrong. I don't want to tell anybody. I don't want to ask for help. I'll just suck it up. How do you break through that? How do you get guys to engage in this?
Yeah, it is a hard space, but I also know enough about men that they appreciate the structure that Men of Iron provides, right? And so when you put a program in front of them and you share a testimony of a man going from A to Z or A to B, then they see that picture pretty clearly. And I believe everyone needs a mentor, and not so it's not where you're saying, oh, you're less than, so you need a mentor. I don't believe that at all. We don't believe that. We believe everyone needs a mentor. Everyone should be pulling someone up and having someone pull them up from their wisdom, right? So their life experience.
So, you ever get into the whole everybody needs a Barnabas, a Paul, and a Timothy? You ever talk about that? Will you unpack that for somebody listening to this on the treadmill or something? What does that mean?
Well, yeah, like I said, I think everyone has some experience, right? So if you're Men of Iron, we're targeting men that are out on their own, right? Not under their parents' house, or they're independent. Yet we have proteges that have been 60 plus years old. Say, hey, I want to learn. I want to continue to learn. I want to continue to get better. And so you should have, we believe that you should be pulling someone along with your experience, your life experience, and also have someone else pulling you along with their life experience.
Yeah. So like having a mentor, being a mentee, being a mentor, and then maybe having a peer too is also helpful, right? Like,
exactly.
So, okay. So now, have you spread this to how far is this spread?
Yeah, we have some hot pockets across the states, some hot areas. So for example, we want to impact 4,000 men this year, and those 4,000 will be involved in a program or product that we have. And so that's our goal this year, is to have an impact on 4,000 men. We have a new model that we're excited about that has boots on the ground. We have an iron rep, and they have an iron table around them in their local community. And so we're excited about that, where we know that we can't be everywhere, but we want to use what we've learned and what we have and resource and equip men in their local community that have a passion for mentorship and coaching. And we're set up for that. So anybody across the country can get involved.
So if they want to learn more, what's the best way to do that? If somebody's listening to this and they want to learn.
Yeah, menofiron.org.
Yeah.
And we'll have a landing page there for them to check out with executive coaching, and then an iron mentor, which it's really somebody that has some capacity with leadership and resources that can get it started and initiated in their local community.
So give us some of the breakdown of the structure of the different areas that men are encouraged to mentor others. And one of those areas, I want you to tell us if you can tie it in with one of the principles, tell us a fun story. But first, give us those principles, or the
The core
different
five.
sections.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sure. Yep. So we use the core five in our products and programs, and that's faith, family, fitness, finance, and friends. And so those core five we keep it simple, so men can see that when those five things are balanced and you're pursuing each of them, starting with faith, that's our most important, and we start there because everything radiates from your faith. Then we believe we can have an impact on that man through a mentor. And so a fun story, let's see.
So let me I'll give you a lead here. So I know you were into motorcycles when you were 6, and you have a need for speed.
Yeah.
You're like whatever, Top Gun, only on motorcycles. But and I know recently you had a chance to race on the Porsche racetrack. But I know that you got to spend some time with one of those 5 Fs was with family, and then something may have caught on fire.
Okay.
Not sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Give
So
us a quick summary of what happened there, and was it, yeah, how did that end up building a family bond?
fortunately, it wasn't the car we were in, but we did this backcountry junk car race, and so you could bring any car you wanted to. It had, it was a junk car, and you'd race around this field. And some guys were pretty serious about it. They had chains on their tires and things like that. And so my sons and I, we took this old Honda that we picked up and went and raced, and we had a blast. But one of the guys that was pretty serious about it, he and his son were in the car, and it overheated, and they had the radiator in the back seat to keep it from getting hit. And one of the hoses blew, and they jumped there. It's just like this poof of steam, and the both of them jump out of the car, and the car's now it's careening towards this guy's airplane. So it was gonna hit the airplane. My buddy's son is sprinting after the car. He was able to get into the steering wheel to steer it into a tree. So there was no injury or no major damage. So anyway, yeah.
But there was some good family bonding that happened, and nobody got hurt.
That's right.
Okay, this is 2 crazy motorcycle stories we've had on this podcast, and they come from 2 of the calmest people I've ever met. I guess the great racers have to be calm. I would be the worst racer ever. I'd be panicking the whole time. So probably racers need to be calm. It's just like he tells that story like it's like I was going to the grocery store. Okay, you know what I mean? This is nuts. Well, this is so cool because it's really not that hard. One of our favorite, I'm not that smart, so I like to think about the way the arc of the story makes sense. And so like the way Jeff Rutt was asking you about, okay, even when you're talking about being a kid, and yeah, it sounds like you had a pretty good dad. I know everybody struggles with, their kids and their parents and all that kind of stuff, but overall, sounds like a pretty positive relationship. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
So you have that. Obviously, I don't know a wrestling coach that's not tough. Okay, so obviously it was probably pretty tough too. And so you kind of have this tough but strong and effective dad. You're an athlete, so you're and you have business coaches, actual coaches. You are a coach, literally, of wrestling. I know now, and so and then God kind of calls you to have bigger impact. So what do? You pick being a coach essentially to other men. It's kind of it's just, and you own a bunch of iron and you name it after iron. Anyway, it just all fits. This is like the most beautiful little bow. It makes my little brain all satisfied and happy. So really love the way you're using the things that, like Moses, Moses was bitching about not having any resources, and God's like, what's in your hand? Oh, this whole thing. Oh, you mean all the wrestling coaching I had and all the mentorship and the father and all the, so you're just using what's in your hands. So I really just love hearing that. And And so, as we wrap up here, the question we always like to ask at the end is just a practical tip for somebody behind you. There's some guy listening to this probably who's like, man, I could probably use a mentor or whatever it is. They're stuck in the mud a little bit. And what are they supposed to do tomorrow to make progress?
Yeah, I would say, like I mentioned, I would say to find a mentor,
Yep.
right? And we can help you at Men of Iron. But I think I would tell them to read Proverbs.
Good advice.
I would read the proverb of the day and keep doing that every day. When my boys were in high school, we would do that every morning when they had before school. If it was the 7th day of the month, we would read Proverbs 7, and that stuck with them. And we were, they mentioned that to this day, that wisdom that you learn through that, it's God's wisdom. And that's those two things those are practical tips. There's also a book called The Richest Man That Ever Lived, based on Solomon, the life of Solomon. And I recommend that book to go along with reading Proverbs as well.
That's good advice.
The wisest man who ever lived, spewing God's wisdom through him. Not a bad place to start, probably.
So, Bryan, one other quick question for you as we wrap up here. So, balancing with, it's called the Generous Business Owners Podcast. When you started Men of Iron, that obviously took some of the resources, both time and financial resources, away from, you have a pretty demanding business going on that you're a big part of, going through, just talk through how God called you to figure out those priorities and balancing all that you were making decisions on, what that decision tree looked like each day. How much time, how much resources am I going to apply? Because there's got to be listeners that are thinking, I ain't got time for that.
Yeah. I felt like God gave me the vision, and I needed to be obedient and follow up on it. And it wasn't easy a lot of the time. But we serve an abundant God, and where there's a will, there's a way. And so I would say it's worth that journey of being a bit stretched or stretched thin. So yeah, that would be my advice, is to pray and work, pray and act. Keep going after it. Because I think he has big plans for all of us, whether that's, that might mean different things to different people, but I do believe that he does has good plans for us.
In other words, what I hear is he'll make the time for you. He'll balance it. He'll kind of redeem both.
Thank you. Thank you for your obedience to that call, and thank you for your sacrifice. Just like you talked about, it takes sacrifice in wrestling, takes that perseverance. It takes sacrifice in your business, in your Men of Iron nonprofit. Also, thank you for your partnership with Hope International. You have done so many things for so many people, and you make it sound so easy. There's a lot happening in Bryan's life, and it's we're very grateful for it, and so grateful for, on behalf of all the families that have been impacted, marriages restored, family relationships restored, business relationships that have been restored, and it just keeps growing.
Thank you.
Love it. Hey, Bryan, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thanks, Jeff. And thanks, everybody, for listening to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. Please check out our website, www.generousbusinessowner.com, and follow us and share it with a friend. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Generous Business Owner Podcast with Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can find the guest contact information in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.